Now let's talk about volcanoes. You do need to know that a volcano is a depositional mountain that's formed when magma reaches the surface and then solidifies. When that magma pushes through the Earth's crust, it creates a mountain, and then when it breaks through, the lava pours out. It may exit the mountain in a quiet lava focus eruption, or it may come out in a violent explosive eruption. Remember, magma rises because it's less dense than the surrounding rock. Some characteristics of magma. Remember, magma is molten or melted rock. It still contains the minerals that the rock has, but it is in a liquid form. Rocks form when the lava that's at the surface cools or freezes, and this is specifically called extrusive rock if it's at the surface. Now remember, igneous rocks of the rock cycle form when liquid rock then freezes. Rocks formed from magma that crystallizes inside the earth is intrusive or plutonic rock. Remember, intrusive means in the earth, and this is specifically talking about igneous rocks. Here we have the volcanic or extrusive rock, basalt, andesite. And then at the bottom you have the plutonic, the intrusive rocks, okay, with coarse crystals, meaning that the crystals have longer time to cool, so that's another sign that it's intrusive. This would be gabbro and granite. Okay, here's a picture of ash and the volcanic foam called pumice. Pumice specifically is a less dense rock. It's less dense than water, so it can float. It is also a light-colored igneous rock with lots of holes in it that forms during an explosive volcanic eruption. These holes are actually created from the small bubbles of gas, sometimes even water gas, water vapor, if the magma cools underwater and the water can get trapped inside. But usually these are going to be pockets or bubbles of gas. As the magma cools, these bubbles of gas get trapped inside, so it's air. So it's not just empty holes, it's filled with air. Obsidian. We've already talked about obsidian as well as pumice. Obsidian is called volcanic glass, or referred to as volcanic glass. It is extrusive. We know that there are no crystals in it, so it cools very quickly. Where are volcanoes formed? We talked about how volcanoes can be formed at a subduction zone, so a convergent plate boundary where oceanic and continental crust collide, forcing the oceanic crust underneath. Then as that oceanic crust, that subduction plate goes under, it then melts, and then the less dense magma rises to the surface, creating volcanoes. That's one. A second one would be a divergent plate boundary, where you have a rift or a trench. The Mariana Trench would be an example. Also, we talked about how Iceland is slowly getting larger. It's on a divergent plate boundary. So you have a lot of volcanoes. As the plates move away, magma rises between it. And so you have a lot of volcanoes there. The third type would be a hotspot. And we talked about Hawaii being a hotspot in the middle of a plate. So this is not at a plate boundary. So the first two are at plate boundaries, while a hotspot could be in the middle of a plate, such as Hawaii. Okay, here's a picture of the trenches or rifts, as you have a divergent plate boundary on the left, and then you have the subduction on the right. Here we have 9 terms. I would really encourage you to put these on index cards, study them. We will be talking about them. There may be terms just asking you to identify. There may be questions just having you identify the term from the definition, or I may be incorporating the term in a sentence or a question, and you're still going to have to be able to identify and know what it's asking from the term. So here we have a vent, which is a crack on the side of the volcano. This is where magma may escape on the side of a volcano. And then you have the crater. The crater basically is the top opening, the deep hollow opening of the volcano. Lava and magma. Lava, magma, pretty much the same thing, except it's talking about location. Lava is the melted rock or molten rock that's at the surface, while magma is the molten rock that is below the surface before it exited the Earth's crust. Molten means melted or liquid form. Eruption is any type of release of gas or magma. So the release of gas, magma, or rock of a volcano would be an eruption. There are quiet and explosive eruptions. A bomb, this is when you have an explosive eruption and a chunk of rock is thrown out. So you need a very strong force to actually rip apart the volcano and throw these large chunks of rock out. Maybe even perhaps from the side of the volcano. Cinder. Cinder is another name or a form of larger pieces of ash. Ash is primarily microscopic, glassy little fragments. Microscopic, glassy little microscopic, glassy little fragments. So cinder would be a larger form of ash. And the last one here, pyroclastic flow. This is basically when a volcano erupts and all the gas and ash comes out of the volcano, usually from an explosive volcano, and basically that large avalanche of gas, cinder, and rock goes down the volcano, goes down the mountain like an avalanche. And this is a great example of this is actually what happened to Pompeii. Basically, this avalanche of gas and cinder came down and mummified the people. If you want to look up Pompeii, you can see some of the people were actually, I think, there were people, there were animals that were completely mummified while they were doing just normal things. Some people were laying down, some people were sitting up, or even standing. Okay, you can see in this illustration, you can see the pyroclastic flow. You can see some different things that are formed from it, such as the lava, acid rain, landslides. Here we have a lot of the gases given off from a volcano that will create the acid rain. So these gases are absorbed into the water that is in the clouds. And then these gases can change the acidity of the water. Okay, here we have some of the parts of a volcano. We have the main vent, the side vent, and we have the crater. Now we have three basic statuses of a volcano. We have an active or alive volcano, which means that it actually erupts recently or often. We can have a dormant volcano. A dormant or sleeping volcano, it's when it hasn't erupted for a very long time, but it may still erupt in the future. Then we have a volcano that's extinct. It's pretty much dead. It hasn't erupted since historical times. So that would be considered an extinct volcano. We're going to focus on three types of volcanoes: the shield volcano, the stratovolcano, or called composite volcano, because it consists of different layers, and then the cinder cone volcano, which is very steep. Now the shield volcano is generally going to be wider than it is high. It's more of a quiet volcano that erupts lava, and you're not going to have your explosive cinder and large The shield volcano is primarily wider than it is high. It's generally flat. A great example of this would be Hawaii. It is going to consist of more of your quiet eruptions. It's not going to have your fuming cinder and gas. It's not going to have your pyroclastic flows. Generally, it's going to be a non-explosive eruption. This volcano is generally going to have a lot of basaltic rock, like Hawaii. Then we have the composite or stratovolcano or strata volcano. Remember, strata means layers. So basically, the composite volcano consists of quiet eruptions and explosive eruptions. It will have alternating layers of lava from the quiet eruptions. And as that freezes, maybe in the future, you're going to have another eruption that can build up gas and then actually create your explosive volcano. As that gas is trapped, the pressure builds up and then it explodes. And then you have all the cinder and ash coming down, and then that creates another layer. Then you can have years later a quiet eruption that freezes over the ash, and then you can have alternating layers of lava, ash, lava, ash. So it's comprised of alternating layers or strata, and hence the name. A great example of that would be in Japan, Mount Fuji, and also Mount Vesuvius. So remember, we said Pompeii was a city near Mount Vesuvius, and because of the pyroclastic flow, the explosive eruption, all the cinder and gas came down and wiped out the village. The last one that we're going to focus on is the Cinder Cone volcano, and this is primarily consisting of cinder. So it will have layers of pretty much just cinder. That means any of these eruptions would be explosive. Well, this would be Mount Piracutin in Mexico. This is a very steep volcano, very explosive. Now, a caldera is a collapsed volcano, and you can see in the picture, then the magma chamber is partially emptied, and then the weight of the rock falls down and collapses. Over time, water fills it from rain, and therefore we have what we call a crater lake. You can have some smaller volcanoes coming out inside the lake, but this is not caused from a comet or a meteorite. This is caused from a collapsed volcano. So in Washington State, you have a caldera. You have Crater Lake, and that's caused by a caldera, a collapsed volcano. We talked about the Ring of Fire, which is a hotspot of. We talked about the Ring of Fire, which is a pattern at the plate boundaries of many volcanoes.